If you love talking about cats, but your friends and family are kind of over it, this is the podcast for you. Join your hosts, Danielle Stray Woolley and Elizabeth Calico Gearhart, on the Jersey Podcats, where everyday cat lovers share funny stories, challenging situations, and ask their questions about cats. All right, let's get right into this episode.
Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle Woolley.
And I'm Elizabeth Gearhart, and we are the Jersey
Podcast.
Yay! So we are super duper excited today because we have Ross Hewitt. I have never in my life before known anyone who made a cat cartoon or animated cat story, as he calls it, Kris the Cat. It is just so totally cool. I mean, obviously this man loves cats, and we'll get into why he doesn't have any later. But welcome, Ross.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we said we'd work backwards. How did Kris the Cat come about?
Well, Kris the Cat came about as I was thinking about an old Icelandic folktale that I was doing some research on for an Icelandic festival in California before the pandemic. But then the pandemic hit and the festival was canceled. But they had planned to publish a compendium of short stories about Iceland. And I've never been to Iceland, so I thought I would do some research on
my wish list.
And
I've been,
it's
actually.
definitely on my wish list as well. And so one of the folk tales that I saw was about a commoner who brings a cat to the king's castle to solve the king's rat or mice problem. And the king was so happy that he said, well, you can either have a large tract of land or you can marry my daughter. And the commoner thought about it for a second, and he said, I'll marry your daughter. And of course, he becomes king later on. So it's really a story about Scandinavian practicality, which I really liked. But then I thought, wait a minute, what happened to the cat?
I was thinking that. I just didn't want to interrupt.
That was my
I was kind of thinking,
my inspiration.
Yeah, Ross, I'm kind of thinking, how much land would I be worth? If women are equivalent to tracts of land, I guess we're not in Iceland anymore. So.
Oh, I'm not even going to go near that question.
Smart man.
But that's so creative and cool. What happened to the cat? So did you find out, or did you decide to add your own flavor?
Well, there is no folktale about the cat, so it's all my own flavor. And I thought, well, what a great opportunity to have a cat be a hero or a protagonist and get lost in the countryside and have a couple of adventures. So that's what ends up happening in the story and in the film.
I love that. I mean, I love that the cat is just kind of an aside, but you've made him the star because he really was the one who solved the problem, right?
Exactly. He deserves all of the credit.
Excellent. So tell us, have you won any awards? Are you showing at any festivals with this?
Well, so far, Kris the Cat has been accepted to 8 festivals in the United States and in Australia and Wales. And there's probably about 10 more to go that I'm waiting to hear from. But it did receive an outstanding achievement in children's short by the Indie Film Awards in Los Angeles back in November.
Congratulations. Okay, Danielle. Danielle, go.
So I wanted to ask, why cats? So you created this cool story based on some cool stuff you learned about that culture, and we all wondered about the cat. But why did you decide to focus on a story about a cat?
Well, having grown up with a fair number of them, I just...
What's your definition of fair number of them?
How many did you have at once? How maximum number?
How about Lucky 13?
Whoa.
Your parents loved cats too.
They had to get a king-size bed to accommodate them all at night.
Oh, wow.
Except for one, Sissy, she slept under the bed, but everyone else was up on top.
Well, she's smart. She's like, there's no room up here. I'm going to go to my own quiet spot under here. This is all mine.
I bet it was warm in the winter, huh?
My poor father, because it was my mother's love of cats that drove those decisions. And that's what you do, I guess, when you're married. You make sacrifices.
So what you're saying is I'm able to jump my 4 to 5-ish up to 13. You think I can make that happen? Is that you're telling me there's hope?
It's very, very easy. Just don't get 2 of them spayed.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yes.
Oh my.
Yeah. So not only did we get a lesson in child rearing, we got a lesson in child making as well.
So, but that's a good plug for, spaying and neutering your pets, because it can happen very quickly and very easily. And when they're young
absolutely.
too.
And they have more than one at a time too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How many did they have in their litters?
Well, they had 6. So we slowly got up to 7. And then next thing you know, we had 13. And we kept them all.
Yeah.
Did you get them all fixed?
Yeah.
Oh, eventually, yes. We got them all neutered.
Yeah, because otherwise it would have been at 102.
Very quickly.
Well, I experienced and learned so much from having all these cats growing up, because they are problem solvers and they are so curious and constantly wanting to explore their world. And I think that those are 2 very important qualities that we all need and that children can definitely learn from.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have my little cat Max, who's not on the wall behind me. I have yet to get his portrait done. And we got him from young, and he had a condition where he's scratching himself, which is why we started the podcast, and to get help from people in the community for that. Anyway, he's fine now. He's on medications, but he was raised they said he was 8 weeks when we got him, but he was only a pound. So I don't really know how old he was. So he knows no fear. And so, because he was always in a loving environment. So he follows us around. He watches what we're doing. He tries to help. He's wondering what's over here. So he's very curious.
Yes. And our cats knew every inch of our apartment. And we lived in an apartment with all these cats. It was the upstairs of a 2-family home. And so they knew every inch of the place, and they were just wonderful to have. And so I was really inspired by that, by how smart they are, how curious they are, how energetic they are, and those are great qualities for children to emulate.
Absolutely. And very loving too. My cats are very loving.
Yes, and very social, and I wanted to depict all of those things in the film.
Now, you had mentioned previously that you consider cats to be a protagonist too. Is it because of all of the different behaviors that you witnessed, with having 13? I'm still like absorbing the fact you had 13.
You're just so
That's
jealous.
amazing.
I can see.
No, I think it's amazing. Yeah.
I'm
so,
jealous.
Is that why you? Yeah. So is that why you feel like you yourself like have an inner cat, and that cats can be protagonists in stories? Like, I'm still trying to connect all the dots of like how you got to this cool spot of making this film.
Absolutely. I think I see myself in Kris the Cat, and I see a number of my cats in Kris the Cat as well. I think he's a compilation of a lot of them. And I realized that, I'm curious too about the world, and I love to learn new things and experience new things. even if I don't like them, I'd at least like to try them once, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized, yes, some of my own personality comes out in Kris.
Well, Kris is your only cat right now, right?
Well, yeah, he's my virtual cat, unfortunately, because when I finally got another cat, I adopted the runt of a Scottish fold litter,
Oh.
and kittens, of course, shed their dander at a much higher rate than adult cats do, and so I became, and became clear that I was in fact highly allergic to cats. And I ended up, after suffering for a long time and finally figuring it out, ended up taking allergy shots for 5 years so I could live with that cat. And her name was Atalanta, and I just loved her to death.
But
Aw.
you're kind of tired of getting shots all the time. So you're living through your virtual cat now.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
I just cat sat for a week in New York for friends of mine, and I kept my petting to a minimum, and I made sure that I washed my hands frequently and didn't touch my eyes, and I was able to handle that situation for a week. So I was very happy about that, and it was sure fun to hang out with two cats that I think they were brothers and from the same litter, and they were under 2 years of age.
I love that you're able to find other ways to enjoy cats, because I can understand too, because I've had allergy issues before, and it's not fun. So I'm always torn when people are like, oh, I have to rehome my cat because of allergies. There's some people that I think use that as an excuse. I know we've talked about this before. Then there's people with legitimate allergies, and they're doing what's best for the animal and what's best for your health. So
And it was
thank you for sharing that.
yeah,
I think people need to hear that.
It can be a very tough decision because we love our pets, and cats are very often when they want to be very loving back.
Well, we were wondering if Max was allergic to us for a while, or allergic to our yard or our house or something. Because my daughter was like, oh, when I come by him, then he starts scratching afterwards. I'm like, no, it's like you stir things up when you pet him or something. So he scratches again sometimes, but the steroid and the cyclosporine and the Zyrtec seem to be managing it now. But, we're not the only ones that have allergies. I don't know, would Max do better in a different environment? Maybe, but we haven't controlled in this one. And he's such a strange cat that I don't know that anybody else that I could really find. I don't want to find another home for him either. So
he's your baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know to the extent that vets do patch testing the way pediatricians and allergists do on people to see what a cat could be allergic to. But yes, a couple of our cats ended up having severe kind of skin allergies as well.
Yeah. What did you do for them? Just out of curiosity.
Same thing, steroid creams when we could, and pills.
Yeah.
And just for those who aren't aware, Ross is also a retired physician. So we forgot to insert that part at the beginning. So he's familiar with so many different things.
Right. What kind of medicine did you practice?
I was an infectious disease doctor, and I worked a lot with AIDS patients over the years.
Wow.
And so I've been a doctor now 40 years.
Wow. So you must be really happy with, I remember when AIDS came out and it was like killing everybody. And now
it was horrible.
Now it's under control pretty much, right?
Yes, it was horrible for a good 10 years. It was really, really bad. And but things are much, much better now.
Right. Scientific research is amazing, right?
No question about that. And yet science is very humbling. It tells us what we don't know as much as what we do know. And many discoveries in science are accidental, as much as conspiracy theorists think that we can devise and create these monstrosities. We as a race are just not smart enough to do those kinds of things. We just aren't. And so much of science is just hit and miss. And we found that during those days when we were looking for an HIV vaccine, and we had some good ideas, and none of them really panned out. Of course, they didn't, because we would have one today if they did.
Right.
But the newer technologies now that help develop COVID-19 are helping to develop new HIV vaccines. So maybe we have a second shot at it this time around.
Oh, that would be
It's
awesome.
interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting hearing you speak about like the science and the super, I don't want to use the term professional, but like super analytical, brain heavy stuff. And then you do playwright and directing and acting and all this fun stuff. Would you say that that's a creative release for you? Like, how did you wind up getting into all of these fun things?
Well, I played Tiny Tim in a production of Scrooge when I was 8 years old, and then I
Not
was
the Mickey Mouse version, right? That's the only version I knew forever.
You were
No.
hooked. You were hooked.
Like,
I
oh,
was
there's a real
hooked.
Tiny
I
Tim
just
story?
had so much fun. I loved it.
I love
And and then I just started doing theater at every level of education that I've been in, including medical school. And then I realized, okay, I got to set that aside, learn what I got to learn, so I can be the kind of doctor I want to be, and then I can go back out there and pursue creative things with theater as a kind of a hobby. And so that's what I did once I got into established medical practice, and in the early 1990s. And I've been doing theater in the community and semi-professionally ever since. And so it was kind of natural that I went from from acting into playwriting, and then from playwriting into short story writing, which is how Kris the Cat came about, and then from there into screenwriting from the short story, which is similar to playwriting but different. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to go into production. I'm going to make this cartoon myself just to see if I can do it. And that's what happened.
Awesome. Well, you certainly don't lack for brains. I guess if you want to do something, you're going to do it. Right?
I just laughed. I chuckled so hard that I just hit my stop video button by accident.
You know, here's the lesson that I learned from taking care of AIDS patients for so many years, is that life is short. And we don't know when our time is up, and we have to make the most of our time in this world. And that's what I try to do every day.
That is really true. You know, I'll bring this up here. I was meditating the other day, and I was thinking, like, we ask questions. My husband and I have a radio show. We ask questions of everybody. And I was thinking a good question to ask people, I think, is, what do you like about being alive? Like, you know, so many times we think about what's going wrong, but really, if you stop and think, what do you like about being alive? Like, do you like the taste of chocolate cake?
Yeah. And I mean, that also ties into the practice of gratitude journaling.
That's a good
a
one.
lot of people, including Brene Brown, have really talked a lot about that. And that's the same kind of thing. Instead of looking at all the negativity that goes on in the world, and, you know, news media, and they make money off of negativity and people wanting to be afraid of stuff. And we need to think about the good things that are in our lives, and I've been doing gratitude journaling now myself for over a year, and I find it tremendously helpful. And sometimes I'm grateful for the same thing a week later than I would, but that's okay because I'm still grateful for it. And I can always find a reason why. And sometimes I can write up a list of 10 things I'm grateful for. And sometimes it's just one that day, but it's still something. And I don't do it every day. I started it out doing it every day, but I do it a couple of times a week now. And I continue to do that. So I highly recommend it.
That's awesome. Do you feel like that sparks your creativity too?
Absolutely, because writing is a creative form of expression, and you just have to practice it. So I try to give myself opportunities to practice it, and that's definitely one of the ways to do that. It helps you reflect and think about things, and then sometimes funny stories happen as a result of the things you're grateful for, and it just springboards from there.
Yeah, I found that when you're doing that kind of stuff, sometimes, especially if you've got a very like strategic type brain, or like very like got to get stuff done type brain, that you write stuff down, you try to repurpose it. At least that was my experience the first time I tried writing. Is I'm like, oh, this is good stuff, I got to share this with somebody. And then I found that really, no, this is just for me. It doesn't have to be shared with anybody. This is just stuff that I want to write down to kind of recheck myself and put myself into a nice state of being, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do it just for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have been part of 2 different kind of ongoing creative writing communities. And both of those have given me opportunities to share my writing with just other writers. And it doesn't mean I'm going to share it with anybody else, but thinking about things that I just notice, or that are on my mind, and yeah, sometimes those things are negative or scary or funny or surprising. There's all kinds of stories out there, and that's why we love them so much, because they delight us.
What about stories, just because you've had so many cats growing up, and I'm sure you've uncovered stuff during the research phase of, developing Kris the Cat. What are some either cool stories about cats, or maybe some misconceptions that you've kind of unraveled or found out about what people think about cats while you were creating that movie?
Well, I think the one thing is that cats were certain people are afraid of cats, and I've never ever had a reason to be afraid of a cat, unless you're threatening a cat and the cat is going to protect itself. But the idea that a cat can suck away a baby's breath in a crib, and
oh my gosh, you just gave me flashback to a movie growing up. I can't remember the name of it.
Exactly. Old
Thanks
Wives.
a lot. I'm not going to sleep tonight, Ross. Thanks so much.
So people are very funny about that, in particular, about allowing cats near babies for some reason. That's a thing. And of course, sometimes you can get cat scratch disease from a cat scratch. You can also get it from other animals. And so it's kind of a misnomer to call it that, but that's how it became popular. And but I mean, you can get bitten by a dog and have a bad infection from a dog bite as well. So it's not like cats are to blame for something that no other animal is to blame for. But the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that cats they are predators, and they do hunt mice in particular.
Or feet. If you have inside cats, they hunt
or
feet.
anything that moves.
And birds.
And so a lot of city kids aren't really exposed to that fact, whereas country kids are, because there's grain and there's mice, and lots of farms have cats as a way to keep mice populations down. And yet city kids aren't even aware of that at all. And so I wanted to also make Kris a mouser, because that is an important and beneficial task that cats have done for over 5,000 years for human beings.
Yeah,
I
It's
love
help
it.
protect their grain stores.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that you're putting this kind of information out too, because there's an entertainment element and an enjoyment element, but you also have the educational and the storytelling and the history. So you're doing a really cool thing. We're really glad that you came on the show today, Ross.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm just so thrilled. I've sat in audiences where children are present and families are present watching the film, and they've all thoroughly enjoyed it.
I bet. Yeah, it's adorable. So Danielle, did you have one last question for Ross?
You know I do. I always do. So I feel like I might be able to predict your answer here. But before we wrap up, we always like to ask our guests, what's something that you're excited about? It could be personal, it could be professional, it could be about cats or not.
Well, I'm excited about my next animated screenplay, which I've started writing, called The Alligator and the Catfish.
Oh, cool.
And it is a story set in the Mississippi River, also inspired by a writing prompt. But it's a story about teamwork and climate change, and how selfishness ends up resulting in disaster, a climatic disaster for the residents of Willow Grove in the Mississippi River. And so it's another story where all the characters are animals. In this case, they're all water creatures, and how they all work together to keep the river clean. And I think it's going to have a wonderful lesson for children and families alike.
I think that's the best way to teach, is to put it in a fun story, so they don't even know they're learning something, right? But they do. So yeah, excellent.
Yeah, we look forward to learning more about that when that project is out. And for those of you that would like to connect with Ross and learn more about Kris the Cat, it's KRIS thecat.net. And thank you again, Ross, for being here. Thank you to our listeners. We hope that you are listening and loving and subscribing and reviewing and all that jazz. You can find us at thejerseypodcats.com. And we hope everyone has a great day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Let's keep the conversation going. Give this podcast a rating so other cat lovers can find it. Connect with the Jersey Podcats on social media, or visit thejerseypodcats.com and leave a message sharing a story or question about cats. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode.